You're listening to, or watching, the Talk With Your Mouth Full podcast, a podcast series that features real conversations with real families about mental health and substance use disorders. This episode features a discussion of how culture can affect perception of substance use, how siblings handle a large age gap, and the experience of changing schools. This episode was graciously filmed on location at Bolay in Boca Raton, Florida. We thank Bolay for their wonderful outlook and wonderful food. We encourage you to check them out if you're ever in the area.
Hi.
Do you want to go? The what?
Hi, Marcella. Can I have the Thai
So come here.
spices? There you go, that one.
Yeah.
I guess everybody's ordering that one, huh?
Yeah, it's popular.
Very
Really
popular.
good.
Yeah.
And the broccoli potatoes are fine.
Sure.
Muito bom.
And for you,
All right.
same thing.
Ready to go.
You can go ahead and work for this one.
I don't think I've ever actually eaten here. I've always gotten takeout.
Yeah, I only came here once for that.
You miss food
takeout
as
for
well?
I
us.
wish our office was closer.
Page one.
Who's carrying the tray? Because I have
I
the
think food is also
grace
a
and
huge
elegance
part.
of a hippo.
Thank you.
I got you.
I mean, I could try, but
You
I'm
got
not
this.
confident.
It's okay. We're good.
Okay,
You're all set?
now we need our food.
Sorry.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm very
I thought-
nervous. Very nervous.
I thought you.
Somebody else should carry.
You said
I'll
you didn't
drop
want
Carry
it.
ours,
I'll
Cecilia,
drop
don't worry.
it. All right. Excellent. So I hope everyone enjoys the food. I've eaten here before and I like the food. So we'll be able to do that and chat at the same time. So obviously, since we've got families that are also going to be watching what we're doing, not that that's awkward or anything, let's just kind of go around the table and we'll share our names. I'm Teresa. Everyone's probably watched me a few times before. I'm the program director at Living Skills in the Schools, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist who's been doing that job for far too long, even though it feels like yesterday. So I just want to, let's go around and if you'll let us know what grade you're in, and we'll go from there. Everyone can share ages if they want to, but clearly we all look 24.
23, please.
Okay, Olga's 23. This is a joke I say every time just to see what people say. So Olga, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll let the family go.
Sure. So my name is Olga Ordonez. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I work as the prevention coordinator for Living Skills in the Schools. So primarily I work with middle schoolers and high school students. I've been working with substance abuse not as long as Teresa have been doing it, right? And we actually had the opportunity to work together at a treatment facility. So.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Oh, I guess it's me. My name is Lara, and I am not any of that, but I am 24 years old. So
Excellent.
that is,
Thank you.
yes.
I'm Cecilia. I'm in 9th grade and I'm 14 years old.
9th grade. Excellent.
And I'm Cecilia, in Lara's mother. I'm 52 years old.
Excellent. Excellent. Lovely. So everyone, please feel free, go ahead and eat, and everyone just share when you're comfortable. I think, I'd like to kind of get a sense for, what made you guys want to volunteer to do this with us, and what do you hope that we can do for you? How can we help? Whose idea was it?
Whose idea was this?
Yes. Kanya tua ideia.
Okay, so it's going to make 6 months that I started working at Living Skills in the Schools, in which I love what we do at the organization and learning more about substance abuse prevention. And so when the opportunity arose that we're Brazilians, and we, like in our household, I think I've come to speak a lot about the topics that I hear the conversations that we have at work to like bringing it home and like discussing it as a family. So that was kind of like the beginning of like, hey, I think this is a good idea, because what we talk about it at home, how can we bring that to a bigger audience, to other homes as well? So
Excellent.
And I have a daughter that's in 9th grade, so she's seeing a lot of those things at school. So
Yeah.
it's good to talk about and prevent.
Yes, yeah. It's important to have the conversations, because I think, you know, one of the things that we always try to remind families is that, you know, when you do sit around on a regular basis and have these talks, it makes it easier for students to ask for help. It makes it easier for them to ask parents for information versus asking peers, right? Because, you know, their classmates don't necessarily have the same experience that the adults do. And do you have any younger siblings, or are you the youngest one in the house? Oh boy. No pressure there or anything. And you guys have what, a 10-year age difference?
10 years, yeah.
Does it feel like you have two moms? Does it feel like you have two moms?
Yeah.
It's the
There
running
we
joke
go.
at home.
Really?
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
always,
She
Yeah.
listens much louder than me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
Well, so I think one of the things that I'd love to get your perspectives on is, so I'll certainly disclose that my family came to the US from Portugal. So my sister, who's 5 years older, was actually the first in our generation to go to school in America. My parents had no experience of school in America, and in fact, it was a very poverty-stricken area, so they kind of went to school until they were 10, and that was it. So they didn't know what was expected of me in the schools, and they had definitely no concept of socially what the expectations were. Now, did you go to school in the US?
yeah, so I was actually born in Brazil, and I came with like a year, I was a year old when I came to the States.
1 and 18 months.
1 and 18 months
18 months.
that I came to the States. So I pretty much kind of was raised in Florida. At the age of 14, though, I moved back to Brazil with my mom and my sister. And so I got to experience school here, and then it was like a huge culture shock when I went to school in Brazil, because it was like my peak years. It was like 14, 15 years old,
Yeah.
16, and then we moved back again, and I did high school in America. So it was just like a lot of jumping around, and it was like, you know, you saw kind of the culture in Brazil, and everyone's outgoing, and everyone's like, everything's acceptable in a way, and then here it's like, it was very different. Like, I guess when I was in school in elementary, like, I wasn't really exposed to much. I felt like I was very closed off in a way. Like,
Sheltered?
yeah, I would say, yeah, that's the word, sheltered. I would say I was even really naive growing up. And then, yeah, I think that's where.
I'm curious. What? Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because you were saying shelter and then being exposed to other things in Brazil. Well, like,
Yeah.
I know like substance use is one of the things that you hear us talk. Like, what was the difference that you noticed from here to over there?
So it was like when I would say like from elementary to middle school, nothing was really happening in my schools. Like, I wasn't really exposed to anything. I think like alcohol and cigarettes was like a thing, but not like in the schools, but you know, what I knew of substances. And then I guess when I moved to Brazil, it was like I was 15 years old. You had all the Festa de 15 anos, which is like the Brazilian quinceañera parties where, you know, everyone my age was drinking. And so we would go to a party and it was open bar, and all the kids were running to the bar because there wasn't like a carding thing. It wasn't like, so that was like the shift for me. It was like, okay, everyone's drinking and like, this is weird. And I grew up with my dad always saying like, no, you know, you're not, it wasn't like I would say my parents were pretty strict, but I kind of like also had like I was always worried about doing something that wasn't acceptable, like something that they would disapprove of. So it wasn't like I was.
But the culture there is they start young and they drink a lot.
Yes.
If you watch in the Facebook, on the social media, they always with a cup in their hands, always showing drinks and everything, substance abuse. I never saw any teenagers that I know.
Here in the U.S.,
That drinks,
different.
that do those things.
Yeah. It's a little more, I think those social restrictions are much stricter here.
Yeah, and I would say like in the States it was more like kids are drinking, but it's not very open. Like it's more kind of
secret.
hidden. It's always a secret.
Right.
Whereas in Brazil it was like the shock of like everyone was doing it. It was always like parents knew it was like
No taboo.
They drink with the
nothing.
parents.
Culturally is accepted. It's,
Yeah.
it's seen as normal. As over here, it's like, no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're not supposed to. It's 21. Over there, it's what, 18 in theory?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
In
18.
theory. Yeah.
The legal age.
Yeah.
Which is the same for. I was born and raised in Colombia, so
It had the same.
I kind of understand what you were saying.
Yeah.
But I don't remember having the open bar thing in any quinceañera I attended, so it's a little bit more sheltered, I think, in that regard. So
So how do you balance that out? So, Cecilia, you went back to Portugal when you were 4?
to Brazil.
To Brazil. No. I've got you going to a whole other hemisphere. So you went back to Brazil when you were 4, so you don't really remember being in the U.S. before that. No. I would imagine. Yeah, okay. So for you, coming back to the U.S., this is your second country. Well, what is that like?
She was born here.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, she was saying she was born here, then went back home to Brazil. So it's kind of the opposite to what Lara was saying.
Yeah. How did you adjust to coming to the school system here? What was that like?
It was pretty normal. I went like through kindergarten and stuff.
Oh, so when you came back, when you came back to the U.S., what grade were you in?
Kindergarten. Right?
Kindergarten.
Oh, okay. So we're talking. That's right.
So
I've got the math
She was
wrong.
14, so you were 1 year old when you, right?
No, she was 4 when she moved to Brazil.
Yes, she
She
went
went
back
to-
at 4.
At 4, she went to pre-K. Before kindergarten. Pre-K.
Pre-K.
Pre-K over there. She almost learned how to read in Portuguese there, and she came back here in kindergarten. She started kindergarten here.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, so it
So
was
you're just
not,
a pro on both sides, basically. All right, fantastic. So no pressure. Everyone must look to you for all of the answers. Or they don't ask your opinion. They don't ask your opinion much. How are you adjusting to high school?
I think I adjusted well.
Yeah. Do you like your school? Very good.
you like the students around, like the environment is quite good.
Yeah.
Now, let's sort of keep going on the cultural piece, because I think for me, when I was in high school, my sister, as I said, was 5 years older, and my parents didn't actually know that high school students drank. It wasn't something they thought of as behavior they would see. They thought she was just going to school and she would go to work. So we didn't really talk about substances at all. And I think some of that was because my parents just didn't know. And then when my sister was caught drinking and got in trouble, my parents were not just upset, but they were shocked. And so there's a certain amount where I think my sister had to teach my parents, like, this is happening, right? This is what I'm exposed to. Do you ever find yourself in that position?
No.
No?
Not really.
Did you?
That it's whether or not.
Yeah, like what? I mean, your mom didn't go to high school here.
I felt like, I guess like I had different like friend groups, and so it wasn't like, when I think back in high school, wow. When I was in high school, it was like I was really like one of the art kids. I was, my friend group was kind of tight, but yet like I had other friends from childhood that like was already doing other things, were more like their friend group was very different than what I was used to. And so, and then also being that like most of my friends were Latinas, so it was like everything in that kind of was acceptable. So, I think there was one party that I went to, and I was like, this is what I see in movies, and I've never witnessed, this in real life. And it wasn't like a huge house party, but it was like already that fear of like, what happens if the cop comes,
Yeah.
I already felt uncomfortable. I was like, hey, I don't want to be here.
Didn't feel safe.
Yeah, I didn't feel safe. And so, because I already knew that it was wrong. And so that was like the first time that I was like, wait, what? This is...
When you went to Alta too, the electronic party, festival.
When I was 16, my mom allowed me to go with a friend to a music festival in Miami.
Yep.
And it was like the first time really going out to a music festival, which with just friends. There wasn't like adult supervision, and that was like a huge shock, because that friend group that I went with wasn't really, I only knew one person out of the group, and go to find out, that was the first time I was really exposed to other drugs. And like being that it was not just alcohol now, it was marijuana, it was Molly, it was like all these other hard substances. And I was like, what happens if, like I think it was like, my dad was like the number one thing he taught me was like, hey, don't get in trouble with the cops. And so it was the first time to like be like, hey, what am I doing? Who am I with? And like, and then they're getting sick, and so it's like, what now?
And she was told to not, because my worry wasn't that they were going to try. Is this somebody's gonna put something that
In her drink, right?
That's a big deal for me. When most of the time when you talk at home, you worry about, like Cecilia. When she goes out, I said, look what they put
your own drink.
in your drink, because I think that's is really.
Well, I think a lot of parents worry that, because I think sometimes you can trust that she has good judgment, right? You knew Laura has got a good head on her shoulders. I trust her. I know she can go and be safe, but I may not necessarily trust the rest of the environment, right? Finding that balance, I think that parents sometimes have a hard time with that, because kids want to feel like, I know what I'm doing. You don't have to tell me to make a good decision. I do make good decisions, but
I was reading an article about fentanyl, and they saying that a lot of students are getting this without knowing. They put in the drinks, and you can die with a little bit of
it
this.
doesn't take much. No,
Yeah.
no.
Well,
But I was, sorry.
you
Go ahead.
can go.
I was curious because I was hearing you the 2 times that you were exposed. Once in Brazil, when you went back and you saw like everybody drinking and like open bar. You were like, no, like I see, like I look at you and I'm like, I'm imagining like red flags were coming out of your head. And you're like, nope, no.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
How do you think you got there? Like, what helped you in your family dynamics, or like in like discipline, or I don't know, like in your family environment to have that kind of mentality or decision making? Because I think that's so important. Because I am the one like talking to high school students right now. And, you know, curiosity is one of the things that they always say, you know, like, yeah, I'm curious, like, I want to understand, like, they want to know. And to you was like, no. Like,
yeah. I think it was like, I think the major thing was, not only was I seeing that that action being done of like these kids going and getting drinks, but I was also seeing the aftermath of it. So it was like the same time we're at a party and they're drinking, hours later they're all in the bathroom getting sick from the very thing that they were taking. So that was like the biggest fear for me, was like, I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to get sick.
Yeah.
And so that was the first. And then the other thing, it was like, I can say that my parents were very strict, but at the same time, it was like, I knew what was bad and what was wrong. I knew what was right from wrong. And so at that point, it was like, I don't want to do it. You know, I don't want to go into that path. It was like, I wasn't really interested at that point.
So what you're describing is basically a phase of moral development, right?
Yeah.
So toddlers and preschoolers, their judgment, right, the way they decide what to do is based on, am I going to get in trouble or not, right? They don't know what's good and what's not good, or what's right, what's wrong. They only know, I'm going to get in trouble if I do that.
Yeah.
And that's how they make decisions. But as we get older, we develop that sense of right or wrong, but it's heavily influenced by our consequences that we get. It's actually not very many people get to a place of moral enlightenment. They get to, all right, well, am I going to get caught doing this or not?
Yeah.
Right? And so what you're describing is having gotten to that place where your parents had given you very strict, firm, fair, and consistent consequences, resulting in, okay, I know what's going to happen to me if I do that, but because they were so consistent, you had that space to make sense of why this is the right decision, right? Why do they have a consequence associated, right? So I think parents a lot of times feel like there's not much they can do, but the truth is, all of those years of saying, if this happens, this will happen, pays off.
And I think it's rather than the consequences, because I don't hear Lara getting to the consequences.
No.
It was the rules and the expectations that was set from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story. In my house, my son used to live here with us, and he lived here until 17 years old. So I never saw him putting a drink in his mouth, never. And in my house, sometimes you had, and I never saw him getting any kind of substance abuse. But then he moved to Brazil, and I knew, and I found out that he was drinking since he was 12 years old with his grandma, his grandma over there. So in here, he respected the rules of the house, but in Brazil, he was like doing all that kind of crazy things, drinking a lot, doing things that is not acceptable in my house. So
you set very clear expectations. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So how do you, so I'm going to kind of open it up for you and Cecilia, because, you know, she's much younger than you, and I, you know that you're a kind and caring person. What do you worry about for her, you know?
I think
what would you want to ask her?
I don't know. I think I grew up not really having, it wasn't like my parents kind of like laid down the rules and that was that, but it was never really a discussion. I would hear it was the example they set out for me.
Yeah.
Like I never seen my dad drunk. I never saw my mom, like my mom rarely had a glass. And so like that already was enough for me to like see like this is not something that was normal in my household, that it wasn't a thing. And so with Cecilia, I think now it's like I think I talk a lot with her, and sometimes I try to like, it's hard to kind of balance out like, yeah, I'm your older sister, or like what's my place of like, can I just be your sister, or will you always see me as like an adult figure kind of lecturing you?
That's loaded.
Yeah. So I don't want to like, I have to also kind of open up to her and be like, hey, like, even though sometimes I'm yelling or I take on the role as like mom, but I'm at the end of the day, it's like I have these hard conversations with her, like my worries of like, well, what are people's intentions? Like, you know, who are you hanging out with? I think I also talk to her a lot about like substances and like what's going on, because what kids are doing today and what's normalized in the school and the language and like.
But I think the fact that she enrolled in the JROTC,
Oh, you're in the ROTC? Cool.
so she's really into this, and over there they have rules and
Yeah.
responsibilities, and they are it's a very health.
Yeah, it's a good program.
It's a very good
How did you
program.
decide to do that?
I've always been interested like in the military and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think you'll go into the military service?
yeah.
So impressive.
What area?
Air Force.
Air Force. Oh, wow.
My
So
cousin is a JAG officer for the Air Force. She joined in her late 20s. She went to law school and then joined the Air Force after that. That's a very interesting career choice. Good for you. Very admirable.
She changed a lot. She was more quiet, and now she's more.
She's still pretty quiet.
She's
but
quiet,
I'm
but she
so
was
obnoxious.
more. She's getting more outgoing,
Confident and-
confident.
Yeah.
It's a really good thing that happened to her.
Oh. Do you feel that too? It sounds like they've observed you as becoming more confident and comfortable in your own skin. Do you feel that, or are they just?
I kind of observed it, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
I had a, go ahead.
you go ahead.
I had because I heard Lara saying something, and when I hear her talk, I heard her in that adult voice, like, you know, the schools have changed so much right now. Like, students are being exposed. Like, I hear my mom saying those things, right? So, and she did ask, you know, sometimes I talk and, like, I heard you saying, I'm not sure if I'm talking as a sister or I'm talking as a mom. Like, how does that feel to you when she talks to you?
I don't know. Like we've talked about like her being more of a guardian instead of like my sister, and how I didn't like that because like I wanted a sister more than guardian. So I don't know.
It's a tough balance because I think the other piece, as she talks, and this is I think an important thing for me to put out there for the two of you is as she talks, what I hear is her worry and concern, right? Which for you is overwhelming because, okay, I'm getting it from mom, I'm getting it from dad, I don't really need it from you too. But at the same time, you are older. So here's the difference though. Parents bear the responsibility.
Yeah.
You don't have the life experience or the co-parenting partner to manage all of those worries. Right? It's just that there's enough of an age difference for you to say, I've seen enough to be worried, right? But you haven't seen enough to feel prepared with what to do. Your parents have seen enough to know, okay, I have to get educated on this and I gotta keep an eye out for this because they have the experience. You miss the experience, but you have the worry.
I think this got worse when she started working the school and seeing all that stuff and knowing that Cecilia is going to that school.
Yeah.
So that's when she starts worrying more about it. You try to put Cecilia in another school, but every school, that's my second school, and the one that I used to work before was worse. Because the kids over there had more money. But I work in a school that they used to do a very heavy stuff like cocaine and things worse than
what we know is that higher economic status results in a couple of things. One, there tends to be more access. And two, because there's more financial resources, it's easier to hide it. So it can go on longer before someone intervenes, right? I think in that sort of, mom is acknowledging, like, I saw Lara get more worried the more she was exposed at school.
Yeah.
But see, your mom, that experience gap is that your parents have already seen the way people face plant, make terrible mistakes, and get it together after.
Yeah.
Right? Your mom clearly trusts her judgment pretty well. She clearly trusted yours. You just don't quite have that yet.
This is true. This is true. I think I think like the worry did build up when I was like trying to, when we were looking at schools for her and what were the options, and I was trying really hard to get her into another school. And then it was like, okay, this is it. Like, you're going to the school. And so then it was like, I also saw Cecilia, like who she was in middle school to who she is now and how much she's grown. And so I think ROTC was like one of the greatest choices that she made, because I like, for me, when I was in high school, like, you find your group, and for me it was the art group. And today she's in her own community that, it's like that, those friendships that she's making. And
I'm gonna throw you a bone here, because dude, we really have to acknowledge that the art group and the ROTC group means completely different exposure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, different things are happening at that lunch table than at this lunch table. Fair? Yeah.
Like what? Bring me in, because I did not go to school here.
Oh, well, so the art table has kids that are a little bit more adventurous, much more likely to be risk takers, right? The ROTC kids.
What do you got?
Yeah, all right, you say what's at that table.
Oh.
I mean, there's a certain amount of risk taking, but what did you see? What appealed to you? What made you say, I'm going to do the ROTC?
Like, I've always been interested in the military, and then seeing the opportunity to join something that's kind of that military setting. I don't know.
What appeals to you about the military stuff? Like, what do you find fascinating?
I don't know. I like the order and stuff. So
The discipline is a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
So you like the boundaries, the things that, like have an order, like that kind of thing. Yeah, completely different from your group.
Totally. Your group is all about
Free spirit.
creativity and flexibility.
I used to be an art kid, though.
Well, you can
she
still
was
be
part of my table.
Yeah.
She just moved on.
Yes.
To the next.
She grew
She grew.
She grew.
out
Yes.
What?
of that experience, and she's finding her own.
There's a
true.
safety and in order. To know what's expected of you, what parameters. Let me just, I think there's a certain amount of discipline, right? I think, it's just two different groups, two different mindsets, and, if you're drawn to more order and structure, then more power to you. I mean, God love you. I can barely follow my schedule or get up when the alarm goes off.
Yeah, I know.
The exercise.
Yeah, the exercise
I'm
alone.
not. Yeah, that to me would be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
not doing it.
No.
And
No.
this group became her social life.
Yeah.
Everything that she does now is with that group.
Oh.
She goes a lot of places. She volunteers a lot.
Yeah, they do a lot of community service programs. See, this is where when Lara's communicating and you're feeling like she's turning on her adult voice, you can kind of school her a little bit, because she has no concept of what your social group is like when they're out. They go to a music event. It's a very different experience than you going with that group.
Well, I guess I didn't really, my art group, we were tight, but it wasn't like the other thing my parents. So Cecilia kind of gets a little bit more freedom than I did. So we ended up being that.
Wait a minute, you're going to like a music event in Miami at 16?
That was once.
I'm gonna. My mom said she's gonna let me pierce my nose when I turn 15, and she.
Oh, well, there's the trump card, a nose piercing.
You know, I'm advocating for certain things of what you
Okay,
want.
that is
but-
fair. You do get an ally
Exactly. So
So she does play the sister sometimes.
from
Time to time, yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't like when growing up. It was like my parents were very strict about whose house I was going to, and it was like I had one really close friend that it was only with her that I would like hang out with, and so
Sleepover.
to sleep over. It was never something allowed at our house unless
mine either.
my mom knew the parents, were friends with the parents, let's say.
Yeah.
But even like I remember in high school, like I had one friend. I had so many AP classes that like my sleepovers were like all-nighters to finish all the work that we had to do. So it wasn't
Wow.
like we were doing anything.
And I was just watching scary movies.
No.
My mom was like that even when I was going to university. She's like, I don't know the parents. I'm like, what do you expect at university to have like parent meetings at the university level? Like that's not happening. So
Yeah.
sleepovers for me was like never a thing. Never.
Yeah, it wasn't for our family either. I always wonder if that's just an American culture thing.
But I do recognize, like I can see the difference. Like I have a sister that the age difference is 18 years from mine. So the discipline was different. The parenting, my mom was strict. Like she has, firm boundaries and consequences and all that. But when I look at my little sister, she is 23 now, when she was going through high school, it was like nothing. So I do see the difference and the connection between the experience that you two are sharing. How does that affect like what you see in terms of like exposure and because I know that you made a point of saying, they're not as strict. Like there's a huge difference between what your experience was and what yours was.
Now, has your sister or your parents talked with you about substance use or like just drugs in general?
My sister.
I would imagine.
Me too, when I tell you about not getting anything from people, no drinks, nothing, no candies at school. I tell you all the time about that. And you said, Ma, don't worry, I'm not gonna take it.
And then as soon as someone offers you a bag of Skittles, who's the first one to be like, "Oh, give me that"?
But what if it's a sealed bag of Skittles?
Yeah, that's the point. It is sealed, hopefully.
It's hard to remember these things when it's a bag of Skittles.
Yeah, but we do talk a lot. I think I make a point of like the things that I was witness. If it's not just like the substance, but it's like people's intentions. If it's whether now like the social media culture today, and like the worry about like what are people sending to each other, what is the language, what is the conversation, because it takes one text, one image to get out there, and you like that exposure. And so even that, like I didn't really have that growing up. I didn't have anybody be like, "Oh, Lara, be careful with this or be careful with that." Like I kind of had to like figure it out my own. Like my worry was like I was very secretive, not secretive, but like I would say I was very careful with what I did and what I said. And so today I want her to know that. It's like, sometimes you think someone is really nice and you might have a friend, but it takes 1 minute that person is turning on you and doing something and saying something.
She's pants.
So
Yeah, she is. The
there's
fear.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
it's like
you
I
can
feel
feel
that
your
you're
worry for her.
yeah, so well, you say I don't care, but I care. But yeah,
clearly.
clearly.
Every adult, certainly every parent, has a list of things that we say, I really don't want my son or daughter to go through that. What can I do to help them not go through that? They all have a list. But in the role of a parent, you know there are some things on the list that they're just going to have to go through. You wish you could stop it, but you can't. And so they get good about what am I going to, I know they can navigate that if that happens, if this happens. You don't have that yet. You only have a list of, I really don't want her to have to go through this.
Yeah.
And when you look at that list, if you were to go down it and pick out what's the stuff on this list that if I actually give myself a second, I know Cecilia can take care of it.
Well, I tell her a lot of the time, it's like, you know, you're going to have your own experiences. And like, as much as I can tell you and lecture and go all about my fears of like what I would hope that it wouldn't happen to you.
But what's the
like,
stuff that you know, if it does happen to her, she'll be fine?
She'll navigate it.
Yeah, what do you know she's capable of?
Okay.
Because I think that's a fundamental difference between being a sister and another mom.
Yeah. I guess she's gonna have her fair shares of navigating through relationships.
Yep.
That's one. Navigating through going out and making, you know, whatever experience that is. You know, sometimes there is going to be a party that we might say yes to, and it ends up being something else. And so, even that, like, you know, I feel like she's going to have her own experiences with. And as you get older, you're going to, especially through university or, you know, whatever path you decide to take, you're going to have your own.
And I think she's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
I hope she's gonna be okay
What's going to get her through? What is it about her? What does she have? What are her protective factors?
Well, she has us, and I tell her, you know, at the end of the day, we're the ones who will stand by you no matter what. So
within her character, what else does she have as a protective factor?
no, I know she has good judgment, and she's smart, and she knows.
When
She knows.
When I saw, because she surprised me because the kind of music that she likes is classical rock and roll and heavy metal.
Yeah.
And I said, oh my God, now I'm gonna have to talk about the drugs more because those kind of bands they use that everybody use. Yeah. But she's been reading books about the experience those guys have.
Oh.
What's the book you reading?
The Storyteller by Dave Grohl.
By who?
Dave Grohl. He's
Dave Grohl.
the drummer in Nirvana. And
Oh, yes. Look at the stories they must have.
Nirvana, that's like my time. It's very exciting. We'll talk after.
She likes the classic, so she's reading, and it's a lot of things that she learned that the experience they had and didn't go well.
So it sounds like her curiosity is in the right direction.
Inquisitive, like getting information.
Right,
Yeah.
right. She's not Googling, right? She's reading.
Yeah.
I think ROTC speaks to her character in terms of, you know, joining the military certainly as a young woman is not necessarily something that, particularly at your age, I mean, I know it's a program down here and people do, but it's not like football or cheerleading where socially it's what's really encouraged, right? This is an independent thinker who's willing to look at something and say, well, nobody else is doing it, but I do. You know, I'm interested, I would like to.
Cecilia, when you're like finding yourself in a little bit of like not knowing what to do or maybe a little bit of trouble, who do you go and talk to?
I usually go to my sister and ask her judgment.
Plus, she must also help soften anything that might come from mom or dad.
Yeah.
They have
Mediator,
secrets
yeah.
that I can.
That's been a hard one because usually, like, my first instinct is going to because like well, she comes to me for advice, and then my person that I go for advice is my mom and my dad. So it's really hard to maneuver that, because
A little
there's
stuck in the middle.
There's
Some things that she don't want me to know.
Well, the confidentiality part,
Yeah.
I think it's what's
Yeah.
difficult. How do we keep that?
Yeah, I've gotten mad at her a couple of times because she would go to my mom
Yes.
and tell her about everything.
my
I'm like,
mom
oh,
just blurts it out.
So what I do when I do therapy with teenagers, I always tell them that obviously in session with me, everything is private. But they're still teenagers, and there's still things that legally I have to disclose, but there are also a bunch of things that legally, technically I don't have to, but I feel like it's something a parent should know. And I always tell them, if you bring something to me that I feel like your parents should know, you and I are going to talk about why I think they should know, and then how we're going to tell them and what parts, right? I would encourage the two of you to kind of do that together. Like, listen,
Yeah.
Cecilia, I need to talk to mom and dad about it. Here's why. And then the two of you brainstorm, like, all right, fine, you're going to tell mom and dad, but
How can we do it together? Like, be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then, making the distinction, as you were saying, like, confidentiality and sister, kind of.
right, because
Yeah.
you still, I mean, there are going to
Yeah.
be some things that she's going to want just between the two of you, and
Yeah.
some things that you're going to say, this one might be a little bit more than that. And your mom needs to trust that they've got it covered, but you'll be in the loop.
I guess I'm still trying to find my way as being a sister, like how to be
Yeah, it's,
just a sister.
do you have friends that have this much of an age gap?
No, not really. No.
And my son is 9 years
Older.
older
Wow.
than
Yeah.
So he does what Lara does.
Oh, does he do
He
with
used to
you?
take care of Lara for me, and now Lara is with Cecilia.
She planned it out. But even like with my brother, like it was growing up, it was like he was the person I looked up to.
Sure.
And everything was about him. It was like, I wanted to be more like him. I wanted to like be with his friend group, and then it was like when he moved back to Brazil, then it was just like me and Cecilia. And
That must have been hard.
that was a shift. And then when I moved back to Brazil, it was like finally we had all three of us. We had the family together. And so it was an experience. It was for sure. It was.
That must have been a hard transition.
Well, one of the things that Cecilia was sharing, can I share? The missing home, right? The guy was asking you how, like which one felt like home. And for you was, Brazil. Even though you were born here, like majority of the years have been here, but like missing family, missing that connection, food, big part, yeah. So.
The life there is completely different from here. Over there, we work hard, but you have the family, so you always have a big social life.
Yeah.
You go every week. You go to some place to a party, because my grandfather had 14 kids.
Oh, wow.
So I have all those aunties and cousins that I go. So it's like both sides of the family. We are really
Yeah, it's just big.
big.
Yeah. So there's always someone to visit. It's always someone's birthday.
Right.
Someone's always getting married.
Yeah, so it's
And the support
complete-
network, I'm pretty sure
the support
it's
too.
different.
Yeah.
I think that's a major thing that we missed here, is that like we only have an uncle. With like I have two cousins that live here, but like when we moved to Brazil when I was 14, it was like, although I went every summer, but I always felt like an outsider in a way.
Sure.
Going back. But then when I finally moved there, for the first time, I felt like what it felt like to have a big family, and to have like that support system, and to have like cousins my age who I could do life with. And even for Cecilia, like we all had our little groups of cousins that we would hang out with.
Cecilia, when she moved there, all she liked to do here was watch movies. She was obsessed with the movies. Yeah. So when she went to play, I remember all her cousins there, my nephews and niece, they playing, and all she could do is put a move for them to do it, and they were climbing trees and doing things that she never experienced here. So she really enjoyed over there.
Being able to be so active.
As she changed in
outdoors.
2 months, she was already doing what they were doing, not worrying about the moves anymore. So
How
she
often
was
do you
happy.
go back?
We went there in 2021. You stay 6 weeks there,
Yep.
and this year you're gonna go, and probably gonna be 7 weeks there.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You must be looking forward to that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I grew up with a very big family too, and I can't imagine having to separate from that and get used to knowing they're all over there, That's hard. That's hard. Well, this was great. Did you guys have questions for us?
Do you have anything to tell us, like to share with us how you should, if that's right what you're doing, or
So
you need improvement?
So you've got some consistency, right? It's clear this is a family with expectations and rules and consistency and consequences when needed, right? You've got that. You can have kids who have two different responses to that. Some kids feel safe in that because I know what to expect, I know what's expected of me, and I don't have much anxiety because I know exactly what I have to do and it feels okay, right? Now I can be me in this parameter. Other kids will experience that and feel constrained and want to fight against it and rebel, right? Those are the two major responses. You don't have to answer, but you can. How does it feel for you? Does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel frustrated, like, give me a break, I need more freedom? Or?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think like the rules and stuff, it makes me feel safe at times, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then I kind of rebel, I guess.
Okay, all right. So a little bit of both. A little bit of both. So I think a little bit of both is great because she's also 14, which means she's at the age where what she should be doing is trying lots of things. And sometimes it is trying things like breaking the rules. And it's your job, not yours, to issue the consequence that says, well, that's the choice you made, that is not okay here, and this is what's going to happen now. So I think you keep all of that going because you create kind of the fence where she's going to be, right? And I think, you guys keep fostering the sister piece, and that means you can just tell her to shut up.
Oh, she does.
I think I can just let her know, like, that's your mom voice. Like, I need my sister.
Yeah.
Like, that can be pretty clear. I heard her. I was like, Mom. Right? Yeah. Like, and just be, like, I think being direct might help you.
Yeah.
To understand, okay, so I need to tone it down, like, whatever it is, like, what makes you feel comfortable when she's actually a sister. Like, when are those moments that make you feel like, you're actually, like, we're connecting and, like, you're my sister and I'm not feeling like this is mom-daughter talk. Like, I think that will help her because I see you're very open and, receptive towards that. So I think that might be helpful for her.
I mean, it certainly looks like kind of together as a trio, you're three women who are comfortable talking and sharing. I mean, maybe not under bright lights and camera with two strangers at the table, but it's, you've spoken very openly here in this environment that can be a little awkward. So I imagine at home it's much smoother even, right?
Yeah.
I think it's good that you're having the conversations, and I think it's wonderful that you're in the ROTC. Much respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't do it at all. Can't even think of doing it. But this was great. I really want to thank you guys for doing this and participating. I loved meeting you. I hope you enjoyed the food. I did. I'm totally packaging it up and eating it later. And I really want to thank everyone for watching with us. Olga, this was great having you here. I love
First
when
time.
we can tag team it.
Yes.
I always enjoy watching sisters because I have a sister and I like to see different sibling relationships. So I like to see the way that you're protective of her and worry for her. And I kind of like to see how you kind of roll your eyes a little because that's fun. What was your favorite?
I think my favorite part was talking about how the cultural differences, like how much both of you, like the different experience that you had in school, and how that made an impact in the kind of decisions that you were making when you weren't going to school, and the difference for you and the decisions you're making as your own individual, which is like completely kind of like going on your own way and finding your own voice and the things that you enjoy for you, that set you apart from the team of, yes, we're women, we're immigrants, and we're here, but like I'm my own individual. Like I think that's the part that I like the most.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think with this episode, my hope is that families can maybe open the door to a cultural conversation. No matter where your family is from, each culture, each country has a different attitude towards substance use, be it more liberal or more conservative or whatever the traditional norms are. I think every family needs to explore what their individual culture is in their home, in this house. This is how we relate to alcohol and substances, but then open it up to this is how the world around us does it, so that you have that cultural conversation that isn't about language or country, but it's about our family culture and the culture that we're around, right? Being able to bridge that gap. So my hope is that with tonight's episode, you were able to kind of consider what is your family's culture around substances, what's your culture around the talk, and hopefully we've given you enough stuff to make fun of us about and start a conversation of your own. So thanks everyone.
Thank you for inviting us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Suzanne Spencer. I'm the CEO of Living Skills in the Schools and the executive producer of the Talk with Your Mouthful podcast.
Hi, and I'm Teresa Barros. I'm the program director at LSIS, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am one of our hosts at our Talk with Your Mouthful podcast.
I think it's going to be really powerful for families to see a family from a different cultural background. How do you have these conversations when your traditions, your cultural surroundings have different attitudes around substance abuse? And I think the big thing for this one that really struck me was siblings and peers, right? Because in many cases when we're in schools, we talk about sibling influence or relate to sibling influence as it relates to negative influences, right? The older sibling who may be giving access to the younger sibling. And of course, in this case, it's completely
very much
opposite.
so. This was a great family with unique experiences in terms of having lived in two different countries with two very different approaches to substance use. Essentially, what you're looking at is almost three different generations because of the age difference between the girls. They each had such different experiences, and I think this is a good example of the importance of conversation to kind of bring all that together, right? How do we sit around the table to talk about, here's what I went through, here's what you're going through, here's what they went through, and here's my perspective, and how do we combine these perspectives to find what's true for us and our family. So I think that is really what I loved about that. And watching these two sisters was just great, because you definitely have an older sister who's trying to be a really positive influence on her sister. And I think you have a younger sister who kind of is already on a positive path on her own.
Right.
So it was great to be able to talk about the worry. What a beautiful thing.
Well, I'm glad you brought up worry, because I think about how many parents are out there and older siblings in similar situations where they almost have too much insider information of what's happening in the environment, and they constantly feel that worry about what's going to happen to the one I love. Are they able to manage it? Will they be able to navigate? What choices are they going to be faced with? What are they going to be exposed to? I can understand not only parents having that constant worry, but also, you know, siblings who want the best for their younger ones.
Yeah.
That's hard to navigate.
It is. And this was just beautiful to see. And it's bittersweet, right? Because you see that older sister really struggling with, I want to be there for her, but I'm also really scared. And where does she get the support for when she's scared? Because mom has the same worries, but she has enough experience to know, hey, worrying about this one isn't going to get us anywhere, kid.
And one of the techniques that I think you speak about often is this idea of when you're communicating, in this case with a younger sibling, it's okay to say, as the older sibling, I want you to know I am really scared, and that's why some of my answers may seem like this. But I know that you are capable, will make the right choices. But I just want you to know sometimes I react like this just because I am so scared, and I think that diffuses things.
I think so. Transparency always diffuses the tensions. The more conversations people have, even if the conversation is about how hard it is to talk, it moves things to be much easier.
The other thing that struck me about this conversation was a family protecting a younger one. Where does the younger one see that in terms of, I feel protected and safety, or do I feel rebellion and I got to show these people that I got to get my own voice? And I wonder, where do you see that being a tipping point for families?
I think that's going to vary child to child, family to family. I think it's going to depend on a family's ability to be consistent and the flexibility, because throughout a child's development, you have to adjust those expectations, right? As they age, you have to give more flexibility, because otherwise you do end up with more rebellion and less safety. So this is where I think, you know, what we had here was a family very open to communicating. And if you're feeling like you're stuck and you don't know whether you need to lighten up and give them space, or you need to tighten up and give more, you know, confines, I think families need to kind of figure out, sometimes by trial and error, give a little space, see what happens, then don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, just issue the consequence.
Well, it really brings to light in all the episodes that we've talked about so far, when does a protective factor border on the line of being a risk factor?
And that's going to vary family to family, and the only way for them to adjust, course correct, is through these conversations.
Right.
And that's why we do the podcast.
I'm so happy that we got to film this episode in Bolay. It so fits in perfectly with what we're trying to do about the wholesome life, about natural, healthy things, this idea of families having these organic conversations. Check out Bolay if you haven't been here already.
I loved it. I loved it.
Thank you for watching the Talk with Your Mouthful podcast.